So I'm gonna need just a bit more time before that wild speculation video where we discuss all about possible theories for the game related to all we didn't see or know about in the trailer. So I thought for today we could discuss gameplay and combat implementation and changes I would like to see. I'm sure you all know I am a huge nerd when it comes to the combat of this series, and much of my channel is derived from that. If you're looking for the #1 resource for Xenoblade 3 guides in the future, I can assure you that you are at the right place, so make sure to subscribe! And also, if you are looking forward to the game and want to see pre-release analysis in general, let's get into this. So let's discuss everything not related to combat first, since gameplay still includes many things unrelated to that. So looking at the trailer, we got about a 10-second segment of gameplay mostly showing the characters running across different environments that all looked gorgeous. This did not feature any combat, but what we can see is that it appears collection orbs may be returning to the Xenoblade 1 or X style, where you just pass over them to collect instead of stopping at a specific spot to get multiple items at once. This might mean that field skills are gone, and if they are, thank you so much, Monolith. More importantly, thinking about why this change would be implemented might be pretty simple just based on the trailer itself. In the final gameplay section, we see the party supposedly traveling in a boat. This would suggest in the game that we will have the ability to control vehicles, and while we've only seen a boat so far, I think there may be a good possibility we might get access to land-based vehicles as well as a form of faster transportation at some point through the game, especially since early information specifically gives us detail about mobile weapons for both nations, which seems a bit strange to include out of everything they could have possibly included here. I have some suspicions we may be able to control these combat vehicles ourselves, and there's a chance they could be used in combat similar to mech combat from previous games like Xenoblade X and the Xenogears and Xenosaga games. There's no real way to know for sure, but I do think it would be very positive to have this change to give some faster modes of transportation than just walking or running. I feel like something the original Xenoblade game had a problem with is just these massive areas that felt empty and took forever to navigate. While a lot of these areas were very pretty, it could still be annoying having to go across the Bionis Leg or Valak Mountain on foot. Xenoblade X and 2 solved these issues in two very different ways. While the world of X was even bigger than Xenoblade 1, the character could still sprint insanely fast, jump off cliffs and take no damage, and all around traverse the world way better. And upon reaching Chapter 6, you got access to Skells, which moved insanely fast through the world, allowing you to easily reach any location quickly, regardless of how large the world was. You can even fly later on, making exploration even easier. 2 went back to a similar movement speed as the first game and did not feature anything like Skells, but the scale and the environments were toned down so no area felt too huge or overwhelming. I would like for Xenoblade 3 to have a mix of both of these changes, and based on trailers, that may be what we're looking at here by allowing vehicle movement in the overworld, and I think this will make the world significantly more fun to traverse and explore, and lead to a lot of excitement when you see things from previous games around the world. Because of this, it would make sense to change collection orbs back to the previous method, as it wouldn't really be a functional possibility to do the Xenoblade 2 collection method if you're traveling in vehicles on the overworld. This has the added benefit of not stopping the gameplay, since you can keep moving after collecting something instead of coming to a stop each time. Xenoblade 2 is perhaps my favorite game ever, but I will say I am glad this has been changed back. My main issue with all of Xenoblade 2 was the existence of field skills. I did not like field skills at all. I will also say that I think the major problem is much of it was tied to the gacha randomness, because it at least felt a bit better implemented in Torna, but even still I think it would be better if we got a game without it. Also remove the gacha, that's really important too. There isn't really much else we can immediately tell about the gameplay from looking at this very small clip from the trailer, but the last thing we can tell is that there seems to be 4 party members out in the overworld at once traveling. This would suggest that in this game we'll be moving up from 3 party members to 4 in combat, but I'll get into that a little bit later. In this next section, I want to briefly discuss side quests and general side content. I think this is something this series mostly has handled pretty well in recent games. The first Xenoblade was a bit rough in this department, having multiple seemingly useless fetch quests and kill enemy quests that ultimately didn't accomplish much. Even with named character quests and the affinity chart in Xenoblade 1, I felt like a lot of the quests didn't even end up feeling as rewarding as they could have been. Now stuff like the Red Pollen Orb chain, all of Colony 6, the Tyrea side quest that actually had voice cutscenes, and a couple other notable side quest chains I really enjoyed, they were pretty fun and awesome, but it definitely felt far and few between. Xenoblade X has probably my favorite side quests in the series. I feel like they do a fantastic job of interconnecting so many of the quest chains, and having these quest chains lead to meaningful results that actually matter to the world. So many of these quests are interconnected that it really helped the world building of the game and makes the land of Mirror a very enjoyable place, and it also made your decisions feel like they mattered. Party member affinity missions were also excellent for adding even more voice-acted side content that fleshed out all of the party members to some extent, which was also nice in a game with a lot of playable characters. Xenoblade 2 had some pretty decent side quests, but not to the level of X for the general ones. But the voice-acted Blade quests were usually pretty fantastic, and served a similar purpose to the affinity missions in X. Torna, I think, had fantastic side quests that accomplished a similar thing X did, in making the world really feel interconnected and alive. Now, the community requirements were certainly annoying, but I felt the general quality of the side quest content was high as it helped not only flesh out the world, but the party members as well, and it too has some of my favorite side content of any game. The direction I think I'd like to see Xenoblade 3 go with is something similar to a mix between Xenoblade X and Torna, without any side quests gating the main story, of course. I'd love for important side quests to get voice acting, I'd love for these side quests to flesh out the world and be really interconnected, and for side quests to have meaningful decisions that will impact the world forever, such as many X side quests leading to a character living or dying based on your decision, for example. It makes the side quests feel important, but also interesting. I also hope they make the premise for many of these side quests interesting and not just some generic fetch quest type. After all, starting a quest with a man and jumping to his death is a pretty insane and interesting start to a quest. I'd like to see something similar to the community feature as far as characters supporting you as well. Maybe even give bonuses in combat and exploration depending on what you might have done. Pawn Specters and Future Connected were a pretty cool concept in how going out of the way to do side content can be rewarding to combat as well. Do we need one giant community affinity chart for NPCs again? Well, not necessarily, but it could be helpful in showing how relations between characters of the two nations might change over time, which could help give the world even more life considering the premise of the game and the war surrounding it. All around, I just want impactful side quests that matter for the world and for the rewards, and hopefully have full voice acting to showcase their importance. So let's get into the big thing now, combat. I have had so many ideas over the years for changes or implementations I would love to see to Xenoblade combat. We have no idea what the system is going to be like yet, whether it will be similar to Xenoblade 2, the first two games, or take an entirely different approach and be something new entirely. But I would be very surprised if the 1 or X system came back personally, and I honestly hope it doesn't, as I would like to see some more originality and combat that gives you more options. What we do know is, as I said earlier, it seems like we will possibly have 4-person parties now, something only Xenoblade X has done so far, and let's face it was pretty useless in that game as Cross just carried everything by himself. We also know the type of weapon each character in the initial main party uses. For instance, Uni has a gun-staff hybrid weapon, and Lan seems to have a weapon that doubles as a sword and shield. This is pretty interesting because it could suggest that each character has 2 unique fighting styles. Reaction to Torna combat was pretty positive overall, so it's possible in this game that instead of character changing, you would have stance or weapon changing as well that would give you access to new arts or abilities, and even change your stats around. Going even further with this, probably the major change I would really want to see in this game is the ability to swap the character you're using during combat, whether with a character already on the field so you can smoothly combo everything by yourself, or even with a reserve party member. I think this would give combat a lot more options with just this change alone, and would hopefully lead to even more skill expression and the ability to do extremely fun things. After all, it's really annoying when the AI character doesn't do what you want them to do, so not being locked to a single character for combat could be an extremely positive change for the gameplay dynamic. Looking at you, AI Melia and Tora. I'd also like to see them keep arts charging with auto attacks and auto attack canceling, or stutter stepping if you want to use the Chugga Conroy phrasing, as I felt it added a lot to the combat being able to charge arts faster depending on how you played, and it is a lot more interesting than just standing still to attack or having the game automatically attack while you're moving around the enemy and not actively causing it yourself. Time-based cooldowns for arts are inherently limited, and if you don't have a feature like Overdrive, it can limit the speed of combat and lead to downtime, which is no fun for anyone, so I definitely like the charge-based arts better. While it almost certainly will, I hope they bring back driver combos or just the ability to combo in general. Break has been a staple for the series since Xenosaga 2, and it adds a lot to the combat being able to combo enemies in different ways. I'd like to see them take it a step further by adding other combo routes you can take to grant different bonuses depending on what you choose to do to the enemy. Now don't let us topple luck infinitely either, as that can get boring quickly too. We have no clue if there will be any mechanics similar to blade combos or specials in this game, since as of right now it seems like every character may fight individually, and it looks like the blade system is probably not coming back in its original form. But hopefully characters have some kind of elemental based specials, as I do think that was a good feature as well. Speaking of the 4 characters again, I find this interesting because in previous rumors and information about the game, there was supposedly plans to get more characters on screen than ever before, but with only 4 characters, that would not pass Xenoblade 2's 6 characters with 3 drivers and blades. This could suggest some kind of pair-up option as you get later into the game, or the ability to summon reserve party members into combat while the active party is out on the field for some kind of special attack, chain attack, or something like that. As we only know of 6 party members, that would also suggest that there would eventually be more, which is an exciting prospect. I'm all about diversity, customization, and options for combat, so I'd love to have even more arts to choose from per character or weapon, the ability to debuff enemies being brought back, more unique skills that can affect the party's combat ability, and of course, a lot of variety in how you can choose to build or approach characters. Since it doesn't appear like the blade system is going to come back, which added a ton of diversity to Xenoblade 2, hopefully each character can do something that drastically changes their stats or playstyle and gives unique abilities, whether that's affinity chart paths or some other method. I don't want to have a limited party with very few things they can do. I think X shows the potential for customization with a single party member though, as you can do a massive amount of different things with Cross, and can still customize other party members to a decent extent thanks to the sheer variety of abilities augments can grant you, along with many other different arts and skill equips lending themselves to different builds. I would also like for customization to be easier in the sense that collecting materials to customize is streamlined, so it's much easier for casual players. No super rare drops, no needing certain materials for aux cores. Treat it like Future Connected in Torna where you can get stuff automatically from doing certain fights, but also allow crafting if you don't have access to the enemies that drop the aux cores you might want. This makes it work both ways. Equipment customization on other forms of gear is always nice as well. And generally, as long as there's deep gameplay system in this game with a lot of depth, then I know I'm going to enjoy it. The final thing related to combat I want to talk about is balancing. The first 3 Xenoblade games have pretty poor balancing. Doing broken things is fun, but some characters like Charlotte and many healer blades and base XC2 just got left in the dust. Then of course the DLC came out with Crossset and Fiora, which overcompensated, and they were extremely broken damage dealers despite being classified as healers. The problem with healers like Charlotte and the early XC2 blades is they don't really offer much besides the ability to heal, so they could never really be as useful as the game got more optimized and you learned how to live without healing. Plus, they gave Charlotte the worst talent art ever to make her even more anti-fun to play. I think the proper direction to go with a healer class character is something along the line of Haze and Torna. While she does heal, she also offers very useful party support abilities by increasing all of the party's damage, reducing all of the party's damage taken, and increasing the party's resistance to debuffs. This gives her use outside of just healing and makes her a valuable support party member for the team. Also, Haze is just awesome in general. This is how healer-type characters should be handled since support options are still very viable options, and you don't have cross-set one-shotting bosses in the story mode despite being classified as a healer. Tank-class blades also need way better ways of getting aggro even if you don't want to give them too much damage on their own. Shield hammers, for instance, were notoriously terrible in Xenoblade 2 because they were really slow and did very little damage, so they could never really take aggro off of the primary damage dealers. Hugo getting a taunt art in Torna was a good example of a fix for this, and it's something I definitely hope more tanky party members will get in this game. Hopefully Senna, our shield hammer looking blade girl, does not suck in this game because that would be very, very sad if she does. Attackers usually are fine and end up being some of the best and most fun options, so I'm not too worried about that. Balance has still been really whack in the previous games where you can kind of destroy anything and hit damage caps really easily if you know what you're doing, and to an extent being super broken can be really fun. But I'd still love for the balance to be a bit better so the game can be more challenging and offer good replay value. Hopefully we get some kind of challenge mode for this game as well that gives a lot of opportunity for skill expression and coming up with really cool builds and strategies. And really just make the combat fast-paced and fun more than anything, with a variety of different strategies you can use to approach combat and still have success. This was one of my favorite aspects of Xenoblade X and 2, and while I do trust the Monolith to make some fun combat regardless, I'd definitely love to see some good options there. Oh, and make the tutorials actually good this time around. Or don't, because I guess that means more people would watch my videos. It's definitely exciting to see 4 party members at the very least, as it can open up a lot of additional possibilities, and I'm really excited to see the gameplay for this game. Hopefully in the next trailer for the game. Let me know what ideas you might have for gameplay in the comments below, as I am definitely interested in hearing them. That's likely going to cover it for me, so if you enjoyed the video and want to see more Xenoblade 3 coverage and content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, support me elsewhere with the links in the video description. You all know the drill at this point. Tomorrow, hopefully look forward to a fun video where I get wild with theories about everything that could be in the game or about things that are fun to theorize about. And as always, have a wonderful and blessed day, and hopefully I will see you guys then.